Hello, friends, and welcome to this video presentation. It has been several weeks since we had any classes, so I thought we could have some discussion through this video on development communication. And today, I would like to speak to you about folk media and how folk media can be effectively used for development communication. As you would know, folk media has been there in the world and in India for thousands of years. In fact, folk media preceded mass media because mass media is, let's say, has been there in the last 300, 400 years maybe, but folk media has been there for thousands of years. So, for development communication, folk media has been very effectively used over the years. This is precisely because nearly 70% of the world's population lives in rural area. And there are rural places even today where mass media doesn't reach. There are very many villages in India where you don't have newspapers and hardly television can be reached. In fact, radio reaches, of course, but even radio also may not be that effective many times in spreading development communication messages. Of course, community radios are there in many places, and community radios are doing a wonderful job in spreading development communication messages. But these community radios are not there in all villages and all rural areas, and that's where folk media comes into play. Folk media can be effectively used. And when we speak about folk media, so what are these folk media? I don't have to explain to you what these folk media are all about. All of you, I'm sure, are aware of what these folk media are. In India, we have a very rich tradition of folk media, very, very rich tradition of folk media, both in North India as well as in South India. Lots of folk media are there, which have been used both for entertainment as well as to create awareness, conscientization. Let me give you examples of just some folk media which have been very, very effectively used. Of course, we have our traditional theatre, which is very popular not just in India but all across the world. Traditional theatre, which was a folk media, even now also its variants are still considered as folk media. So that is a very effective folk medium which has been used for development communication. And then another variant of this theatre is street theatre. The street theatre is very, very popular in many places, especially in rural India, and also even in towns. Also, these are very effectively used to communicate development communication messages. And then, of course, you have another very popular folk medium that is used even today, especially in many parts of North India and some parts of South India. That is puppetry and puppet shows. So these are also very effectively used for development communication and to spread development communication messages. Then, of course, in our Karnataka context, especially this coastal belt, we have this Yakshagana theatre, which is also very, very strongly used for this development communication messaging. Now, what are the strengths of folk media is what I must tell you here. To some extent, we must know what are the strengths of folk media. Now, one of the very strong, let's say, advantage of this folk media is that they are indigenous. The indigenous means they are locally developed, or locally they have emerged, and that's one strength, and that's why they are very popular. Indigenous. Secondly, it is very, very rich in cultural symbols. So they are part of the culture, and that's why it is very rich in cultural symbols. Thirdly, it is highly participatory. It is highly participatory. That means you have two-way communication here. In contrast to the traditional mass media, which is mostly one-sided communication, one-way communication, be it television, be it newspaper, even radio to large extent, which is one-way communication. You have this participatory folk media, which is two-way communication. Now, for example, let's say theater, street theater. Street theater is very, very participatory. You have in the street corner a play is being performed, and then the performers, the characters can directly speak to the participants and then interact with the participants. So it is highly participatory in nature. This folk media, especially street theater, and many other many other let's say folk media are highly participatory. And then, of course, as you know, it is very, very inexpensive, less expensive, and you don't have to spend much on folk media. So that is another advantage of using folk media. And finally, also, it is highly flexible. This format of folk media is highly flexible. You can change, you can modify, you can bring about some changes here and there. So lots of possibilities are there. Experimentation is possible in folk media. So they are highly flexible. So these are some of the advantages of folk media. Now, when we speak about global scenario, globally, how folk media has been used, all across the world there is the use of folk media. But let me give you one or two examples of how folk media has been used globally, especially, let's say, in development countries, these folk media are very, very popular. In Africa, there is a folk medium called as the forum theater. Especially, this is very, very popular in Burkina Faso in Africa. And what is this forum theater? So it's a very popular forum theater there, and it's just like theater, but it is interactive and participatory. And this has been very effectively used in rural, let's say, Africa, especially in Burkina Faso, to think critically about their health problems and health issues. There is this researcher called Morrison. In 1993, he wrote an article analyzing this forum theater, and he says about a particular, let's say, forum theater play called Fatuama the Baby Machine. Fatuama the Baby Machine is the name of that play, which was enacted through forum theater. So it is basically about family planning. So here is a family, a father and mother. So the mother says, no, we should not have too many children. And the father says, no, we must have more children, because if you have more children, then they are resourceful, then our family would be better off. So these are all the reasons the father gives, but mother doesn't agree. So there is a dispute between the two of them. And then what happens is the father drives away the mother and the children away from the home. So this is how that play was played. And immediately after the play is performed, there is an interaction between the characters as well as the participants. That means the audience that is there. How differently could the characters have performed? How could they have performed differently? These questions are asked to the participants, and there is an interaction that takes place. So this forum theater in Africa has been very, very effectively used. So just to give you one example. So in the Indian context also, you have these theaters, different types of theaters are there, folk theaters, which are very powerful in communicating developmental messages. I could speak about this theater format called Nautanki in North India, which is very popular. Nautanki, it's a form of a theater. Lots of entertainment is there, and then also awareness is created by using Nautanki. Now, people have said that this Nautanki is non-textocentric folk medium. Non-textocentric. In other words, you do not have a fixed script in this Nautanki format, this Nautanki folk medium. So it is also very participatory, and characters here also interact with the audience, and so it is highly suited for development communication. Now, coming to street theater itself, as you would know, this is definitely highly participatory, and as the name suggests, it is street theater. That means it is played in the street corners, be it in the villages, be it in the towns, be it even in the cities. So it is very popular in North India and South India. Not only in India, all across the world also, it is very popular street theatre. And this has been known as People's Theatre. It was started by Badal Sarkar in West Bengal, but from there it picked up, and then today a lot of experimentations have taken place in street theatre, and then people are using it effectively to communicate development related messages. So, what are some of the things which are communicated through street theatre? Social issues, health issues, and you know, gender issues. So, some of these things are very powerfully communicated through the use of street theatre, be it health and hygiene issues, or issues like alcoholism, addictions, and all that. These are also communicated well through street theatre. Even in our own city, also many times, you see street theatre being performed. In terms of song and dance in India, there are very effective folk media. I could give you a couple of examples. There is one, this folk medium called as Ala, A-L-H-A, Ala, which is a popular ballad of Uttar Pradesh. In fact, during the independence time, this Ala folk medium, this ballad format of Uttar Pradesh, was in use very, very effectively to communicate independence messages. The struggle for independence through this Ala format, it was used. Now, lately, what has happened is this Ala format is used in Uttar Pradesh and in several parts of North India to communicate development related messages. Okay, so this Ala format is very good for development communication. And then you have this in Western India, especially in Maharashtra, this format called as a Lavani format. It's a dance and dialogue format, a song and dance format. So that is very entertaining, as well as it is being used to spread the development communication messages. Or Gigi song and dance format of North Karnataka in India. Gigi song format is also very important, let's say, folk medium for the Karnataka context. So Gigi song format. Or you have in Tamil Nadu a format called as Villu Partu format, VILLUPAATTU. So Villu Partu format in Tamil Nadu. So this also is a song and dialogue format, like a Harikatha format. So this is also a good format, good folk medium to communicate development messages. Or in West Bengal, you have a format called as Kabigan, a song and dance format. This also is used for development communication. Now, another folk medium which is very popular all across the world and especially in India is puppet theatre. Puppet theatre. Now, puppet theatre, as you would know, you are aware of it, by using the puppets, which are very entertaining and which are, let's say, in a way, they distance from the human beings because they are puppets, and yet they communicate powerful messages to all people. So this puppet theatre is very, very popular in India, in many parts of North India, and of course in some parts of South India as well. Now, despite, let's say, the most modern media that we have in India and also in other parts of the world, this puppet theatre is still used widely in many rural parts of India. So here the focus has been in puppet theatre is largely on educating children, or let's say for the farmers, messages to the farmers, how scientific methods can be used in farming. Such messages are given, and also how you need to promote scientific temper in everything, go away from your superstitions. Okay, all these messages are communicated by using puppet theatres in North India and South India. In fact, Song and Dance Division of India has promoted puppet theatre in a big way, song and dance. So they have understood the value of puppet theater. In fact, life insurance company LIC of India used this puppet theater to promote life insurance in rural masses. So that's when you understand how important this puppet theater is for Indian context. Now, as I was telling you, theater, of course, has been very, very effectively used all across the world for development communication, and different variants of theater also have been used. Now, theater in Indian context is popular all across the states, all over the states, all over India, but they're particularly very, very powerful in several states like West Bengal, Maharashtra, Kerala, Karnataka. These places you have very powerful theaters. So these theaters also have been used not just to, let's say, play historical plays, or let's say plays from the epics or religious related plays, but to communicate the development messages also. Theater is very powerfully used in the Indian context, I would say. Now, coming to our own place, I was telling you earlier, Yakshagana is a very important folk medium in this coastal belt of Karnataka. Of course, this Yakshagana has gone to other places also, but it is very popular in these coastal districts of Dakshina Kannada, Udupi, Uttar Kannada, and also parts of Kasaragod district of Kerala. These are very, very popular medium. In fact, it is growing on a yearly basis. This is not, its popularity has not diminished at all. It is only growing. So this Yakshagana has been used to do a lot of experimentation, no? And even for development communication also, this Yakshagana has been used. I remember seeing a Yakshagana to communicate messages of AIDS disease also. One Yakshagana was that communicating the message. Recently, there was a Yakshagana which communicated the message of coronavirus. So you see how experimentations can be done. It's a very flexible medium, and it has been used to communicate development-related messages. So Yakshagana is another very important folk medium for our Karnataka, especially this rural Karnataka. This coastal Karnataka, and it has gone to many other places. Now, when we use folk media, lots of ethical issues come into the play. What are those ethical issues? Now, folk media has got its own format. By doing a lot of experimentation to give messages of development communication, you may be kind of harming the format and also harming the sensibilities of the people. Let me give you an example. You have in Karnataka, especially in northern Karnataka, Bijapur, Bagalkot, Gulbarga, and some of these districts, these Yalama songs are there. So this is also a folk medium where lots of songs have emerged. They are known as Yalama songs, and these Yalama songs are basically, let's say, giving you a certain spirituality or certain religious aspects of this goddess called Yalama, and the tradition that has emerged from this goddess Yalama. Now, there was an experimentation where these Yalama songs were used to communicate development related messages, but that hurt the sentiments of the people, because Yalama songs were supposed to be a religious type of a folk medium, which people did not agree for development communication. So that's why when you do experimentation with the folk medium, you should be very careful about its format, as well as hurting sensibilities and sensibilities of people. So that's where scholars have suggested, or they say you need to do a little documentation about folk media and divide folk media into 3 types of folk media. The first one would be this very rigid folk media. The second one would be semi-flexible folk media. And the third one would be highly flexible folk media. Now, these Yalama songs and all that would come under the highly rigid medium, so you should not tamper with it. You should not experiment too much with regard to your development communication. But semi-flexible, you can do some sort of experimentation. Like Yakshagana would come under this. So semi-flexible, which means you can do some modifications. Of course, you cannot meddle too much with the format, but you can do some modification and you bring in your development communication messages. And the third one is, which is very highly flexible. There you can do a lot of experimentation, like the Lavani or the Gigi songs of Karnataka, Gigi songs, Lavani, Tamasha or Nautanki. All this come under a highly flexible folk medium. So there you can do a lot of experimentation, and nobody will be hurt. No sensibilities will be hurt, and that's how you can use these, the second and third part, second and third types of folk media to communicate development messages, but better not touch the first type, that is which is very very rigid, to carry on your development communication messages. So that's where we need to be highly sensitive. Now, people are also speaking about integration of folk media with the traditional mass media. Folk media with the mass media. This integration can happen. Now, for example, you take the folk media to the mainstream media, or let's say one example could be you bring your Lavani to television. You televise Lavani. The advantage is that you popularize this folk media as well as you give it a wider audience. So this advantage is there. So these experimentations have taken place, but then there also there are some problems. Of course, you can take this folk media to the mainstream media and then increase its popularity and give audience a larger audience, but to suit the television, you may do a lot of modification with the folk media, and that's the danger, where the folk media may not remain the folk media anymore. Some of these things have happened in Indian context. Now, for example, Lavani of Maharashtra has gone to television, and in television it has become very very popular. But to suit the television format, they've done a lot of modifications, and it has tampered with the format, is what some critics are saying. That is just to give one example. So it could be with any other medium also which has gone. Now let's say when Yakshagana goes to television, of course originality is there, but if it is performed, let's say, in a television theater, television studio, not many Yakshaganas are performed in television studios these days. But to suit the television format, you may have to perform in a particular way, isn't it? So then you may have to tamper with the Yakshagana format also. Fortunately, it's not happening. But what I'm saying is, there's a danger there when we take, let's say, folk media to traditional media, traditional mass media. So you may have to do a lot of modification. So that's where integrating is good. Integration of folk media and with the mass media is good. It is also important, but we should see how best we can combine the two without too much disturbing the folk media. So to conclude, what I've tried to speak to you today in this video is basically the folk media can be effectively used for communicating development related messages. They have been used over the years, and they are important because 70% of the population lives in rural area, rural areas still, and that's where these folk media are very popular in rural India, and that's why we need to make use of folk media to communicate the development related messages. And the advantage of folk media is they are interactive, they are participatory, they are less expensive, and a lot of experimentation is possible, mainly because they are flexible. And the integration of folk media with the mass media is possible, but then we should be careful not to disturb the format of folk media, and then ethical issues have to be taken care of as we deal with folk media for development, communication, messaging. So thank you, friends. Maybe we will uh, once again have another video in which we will discuss on some other topic. Thank you.